If you want financial freedom, time freedom, and want to leave a legacy for generations to come, you probably have heard real estate investing is the place to do that. How do you get started? What do you have to do? When's the right time? If you are looking for those answers, you've come to the right place. My name is Kyle Stanley, and this is Fearless Flipping. My mission is to help you learn this business and conquer real estate investing. Hey, welcome in Fearless Flipping community. This is the Fearless Flipping podcast. You are listening to part 2 with Michael Zuber, who has built up 180 rentals in over 15 years here in Fresno, California, despite living in Mountain View, California, which is about 2.5 hours away. That's an incredible feat, something that he is going to talk about on this podcast. If you missed earlier this week, where he discussed how he sees kind of the inevitability of a correction or a market crash coming up. You want to definitely check that out. He's definitely qualified to be talking about that. He's been through a couple of them, but I really am excited for you to be able to hear from Michael Zuber, who is the one rental at a time guy. If you Google anything about one rental at a time, you're going to see everything about Michael Zuber with his book, his podcast, his YouTube channel, the whole 9 yards. Make sure that you are listening in so you can learn how you can build your empire one rental at a time. All right, back at it with Michael Zuber, and if you missed the first episode, you got to go back, check it out. We talked a lot about the crash or the potential of a crash in the future and what you should be doing to get ready for that if it is even going to happen. But right now, I want to talk about what you have done to build that portfolio, buy and hold. Let's just start from the beginning. Why buy and hold, and how have you done it?
So why buy and hold? Again, Rich Dad Poor Dad gets all the credit. You got to make sure you give props to the person that kind of planted that seed. But I knew I needed and wanted financial independence. Money was a huge stressor in my family growing up. Like the biggest fights, stress, my mother crying, sister crying, just freaky stuff, right? That I can't get rid of, even though money hasn't been a worry for a while. It's still there. And so that I knew I needed a route to financial independence, which for me means my income exceeds my expenses, right? It's never been about a net worth number or an income number. It's, hey, I know X is coming in and my spend is Y, and I have, Z's the delta, right? That was always important to me. And real estate rentals were the answer. So that's why. So why, how did we start? Again, we started back in 2003. We didn't know any different. So the first rule of thumb that most people hear about is the 1% rule, which means you should be covered if you buy a 100K house that rents for $1,000. That's why they refer to it as the 1% rule. And while I don't use that rule today, it's too simplistic. It's what I had in the beginning, and it's what I used to buy the first 3 rental properties. And they were all bought in Fresno. The first one was 107. It rented for $10.95. All of them were really, really tight to the 1%, but exceeded it. And again, I didn't know any different. So the first house we bought was 20% down, because that's what you do, right? That's what I thought. Then I learned that, hey, you can go get an 80-10-10, which means you get an 80% first, a 10% second, and you only have to put 10% down. So I said, hey, let's go do that for the next 2. And then all our capital was gone, right? We only had about $40,000 to start, and we bought 3 houses in about 18 months, as I recall, and we were done, right? We didn't have any more capital. But because we started in 2003, and if you look at the history books, especially in Fresno, 2004, 2005, 2006 were good years, right, as far as appreciation. So how we went from 3 to 8 was we basically did cash out refinances. The first one we did was a mistake. That's where I created the term "no alligators" from, because we did a maximum cash out refi, because again, we didn't know any different. Bank of America, or Countrywide at the time, it became Bank of America, said, hey, the property's worth $150, we'll give you $135, right? And they handed us a check for roughly $50,000, which we used to buy more real estate. Most people got hurt is they went out and bought a car or a fancy vacation, and that's what crushed them. We bought more real estate. But what happened with that first house, because they gave us $135, is it went from positive to negative. And I didn't know that was possible. I thought banks would be super conservative, because that's what I've always heard. Banks are conservative. No, banks are conservative, but they're banking on your income, and I had the income to support it and all that stuff. So yeah, they were fine with it going negative. So I learned a painful lesson, that first point about being negative cash flow, so much so that I created this term called "no alligators," because you don't want to buy or create alligators, even if you are a high income person and can afford it. right? I had a friend many years ago say, hey, I can afford 5 negative cash flow properties because I make X amount of dollars. I'm like, you could, but why would you do that? Why?
Yeah.
Right? That's just silly. Why would you do that? But again, the crash happens, and guess what? What felt really good when you thought trees grew to the moon suddenly doesn't look so good when they're worth half as much, and you just walk away, you do a strategic default, and those 5 properties are gone. But so that's how we started. 1% rule. Don't use it anymore. What we use now, I call it yield. Basically, it's 2 numbers. The denominator is the easiest one to calculate. It's how much cash do I have to put out to make this asset perform. So usually that's down payment. Usually that's closing cost. And the wrinkle is I include make ready. So if you buy a turnkey property, it's 0, right? Because it's already fully done. If you're buying what I used to buy, which is now a mistake, cheap properties, you could spend 20 to 40 grand. And I've done the math, and I realized that my portfolio could be double today if I bought turnkey properties versus the cheap ones, because the 1% rule said buy cheap, which was stupid because financing was easy. I could have bought more stuff and had a bigger base when appreciation came. And instead of having 8, I could have had 16. And instead of going from 8 to 80, I could have gone from 16 to 160. And it's mind-boggling how simple that one mistake was in the beginning. So I really take the yield. So that's the denominator. The numerator is simply expected yearly cash flow. So you do that math. What I believe full-time employees should be shooting for is 5.5 or 6% today on their cash invested. I happen to not be retired, so I could be more aggressive. I look for 7 or 8%, but I have more time to commit to this. But that's what I think people should do. Is if you could find a way to get 6% on your money in a secure asset with 30-year fixed loans, now in the 4s, come on, right? That's pretty good living, I think.
So I want to just clarify something, because that was all amazing information, but it sounds like what you're saying. Let's just take some numbers, for example. I'm the numbers person. Let's just say we have a property that you buy that's turnkey at 100K.
Okay.
That's a low number, but let's just take that for example.
Yeah.
You're having to put down, if it's 20%, you're only putting down 20K.
Okay.
And so, you start cash flowing $300 to $400. That's a good return on your money, right?
So let's just finish that out. So in this case, let's just do the math. So you bought for 100. Let's say it took 18K down, and the other 2K was closing costs. So that's how we got the 20, right? So just take that number, $20,000 on the bottom. Now, what is your expected monthly cash flow? Do you say $200?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just, and that's everything. That's rent minus mortgage payment, taxes, insurance, reserves, repairs, property management, all of that, right? So take 200 times 12. That's 2,400, right? Yeah. So you take 2,400, divide by 20. That's over 10% return. That's actually a 12% return.
Sure, absolutely.
That would be a great deal.
That would be a great deal. Versus buying, let's say, a $50,000 comparable property, needs some work. Yeah. And now you're putting in $20,000.
Well, let's actually do that.
Okay.
So let's do $50,000. Let's say you have to pay cash. Yeah. So now you're doing 50, no debt, right? Because you have to pay that full down because no bank will loan on it. And let's say it takes you $30,000. No, let's say $40,000 because, Yep. So now you're into it for 90 grand. All in. Yeah. Because I don't know about you, but that comes out of my checking account. Yep. Right? So you're all in for 90 where before you were 20. But now, in fairness, you have no debt. Exactly. Right? So instead of saying $200 a month, let's say it's $800. Right? So that's $9,600. So 9,600 over 90 grand is 10 point something percent. So while it looks better, impressive, your return is lower. And on the other side of it too, I could buy 3 more properties with that $20,000. Now you're catching on. Yes. That's the wrinkle that I didn't appreciate in the beginning, that I'm now convinced my portfolio could be double. And my portfolio is not bad, but it could be double if I wasn't attracted to cheap properties when I started. I think too many people are focused on cheap, not realizing the power of borrowing on perfect, right? Pride of ownership stuff that I call it. Especially today, the interest rate's under 5%. Why would you ever write a make-ready check? Are you kidding me? That's just ludicrous. So that's perfect. Because I just bought one the other day, and it's make-ready. So, there you go. It's ready to go. So that's good. That's good. Got lucky. Yeah, I got confirmation right there. Hey, Fearless Flipping community, we are taking a quick break from the podcast to talk about Airbnb. For those of you that don't know, I have built much of my residual income around Airbnb, despite a lot of other investors being really excited about long-term renters. I was not. I saw an opportunity with Airbnb to get to my goals faster, to get more cash flow, and to pay off my houses quicker too. So instead of being
really happy, like a lot of other investors are, with $200 to $300 of cash flow every single month. I've turned my renters and rentals into over $1,000 on average of cash flow every single month. So if you want to learn more about Airbnb, my systems, where I pick my Airbnbs, how I communicate with guests, maybe you've already got Airbnb as a business on the side right now, but you want to take it to the next level, I am absolutely here to help you. You can book a free consultation with me about Airbnb. Learn more by booking at fearlessflipping.com/consultation, and you get me for 30 minutes for free. That's right, 30 minutes absolutely free. That's once again, fearlessflipping.com/consultation, and I'm looking forward to helping you conquer Airbnb investing. I want to go back to this. I've never heard of the 8-10-10.
So that was a very popular loan program, again, when lending was starting to get really loosey-goosey, kind of like 05 to 08.
So no longer around now?
They're probably, well, they weren't around for a long time, but they are coming back.
Okay.
So I've just seen them. So what an 80-10-10 is, you go get a first loan from, I got them from Countrywide, but let's just say it's Wells Fargo. What they'll do sometimes is they'll come in for 10%. That will be a higher interest rate, right? Where the loan on the 80% might be 5%, they'll give you the next 10% at 9%. And then you only have to come in with 10% equity. What that allows you to do is remove PMI.
Okay.
Right, so you save on some expenses. They were like selling candy back in 03 to 06, and unfortunately they're starting to come around again, but they're not in any great numbers just yet.
Okay. So aside from having a turnkey solution property, if I'm looking at start and buy and hold, what other things should I be looking at?
Well, again, I think it's all about that yield number. I think sometimes the cash down, make ready could be a great idea. But again, I think anytime you genericize it to a rule of thumb like 1% or $100 a door or something, you are oversimplifying a complex problem. I'm a simple person. I live on the money that comes into my account. So I want to only know how much money exits, hence the denominator, meaning down payment, closing costs, make ready, and then how much do I expect to come in, which is the expected yearly cash flow, 200 times 12 in this case. That's all I care about. I can, with that simple math and what I share, I can compare a condo with a 20-unit apartment building. I can compare pride of ownership with a slumlord property. That one simple formula tells me what to buy. Sometimes it says buy slumlord, sometimes it says pride of ownership, sometimes it's condo, sometimes it's apartments. It's the same calculation for everything. I don't treat commercial apartments with a cap rate and then $200 a door for a house. Why would you do that? How can you? You're treating them like apples and oranges. No, for an investor, a buy and hold investor, they should all be equal, and that's how I equalize them. Is I treat them all the same with that calculation.
Do you flip any and sell them, or do you strictly buy and hold?
I was buy and hold for 15 years. I had that crazy full-time job, and the last thing I wanted to do was sell something that I had. But now that I've left the rat race, I have more time on my hands. I have started flipping properties, more because I hate what I see from other slumlords. So I buy them, I spend the 40 or 50 grand, and then I sell them. Could I keep them? Sure. But that would only allow me to do 4 or 5 a year, where now I've done 20 or 25 in the last 18 months, so I can really do 1 a month. And I call it filling my cup. It makes me feel good. I change a neighborhood. I help an investor. I help a new landlord. I still keep probably half the stuff I buy, but I do flip now for the first time since I left work.
Okay. So if you haven't already seen it, go to our YouTube channel. There's an awesome video that we take one of Michael's investors through that has been renovated. Yep. It's ready to buy. It's turnkey solution. And we talk a lot more about that pride of ownership as well. But I just want to stick on the idea right now because I saw that investor and how happy he was, how much you were helping him. So if you were to go back and start this all over again, what would be, I think I already know what you're going to say, but what would be that number one thing that you would do differently?
I think the thing I would certainly do differently is I would start earlier for sure. Right? I've been pretty clear to people that ask that my 30th birthday was a big deal. It was kind of that earth-shaking moment where I was like, you're an idiot, what are you doing? So if I could have started in my 20s, I would be so much further along, because what happens when you get to financial independence is you're actually buying time. So I like to talk about it. I bought my freedom at 45, which again, based on the normal 65, I bought 20 years of freedom, which is awesome. I'm not saying it's not, but what would have happened if I could bought another 10 years or 12 years, right? If you start earlier, it just compounds. And I mean, that would be the big thing, would be to start earlier. Yeah, I could only imagine where I'd be.
Okay, cool. So if we have someone watching this right now and they're either starting, like myself, or thinking about starting, what would be your number one piece of advice?
My number one piece of advice for people, especially today, is the secret to this business is living below your means. What hasn't been shared yet on this podcast, and often isn't shared because people don't like to hear it, is the reason that we were so successful in this business and kept buying, which allowed us to create a foundation that grew over time, was that we lived very conservatively. While we lived very close to the edge until my 30th birthday, meaning if we made 100, we spent 100, what we were able to do every year thereafter was live on less and less and less and less. We got very, very good at understanding what a need and a want was. And we covered every need every time. I would say half of our daughter's wants were also covered. But as far as Olivia and I were concerned, we got none of our wants. She wanted a new kitchen, didn't happen. She wanted to move because we live in a tiny condo with no yard. We could have moved 5 times. We never moved. Our cars were 10 years old. So we sacrificed for 15 years. And when you can live on 90% of the income and then 80 and then 70 and then 60 and then 50, you can earn, save, and invest. And that's what allowed us to get out. And not many people want to hear that. Sacrifice takes time. It's not a sexy word. But I promise you, if you can suffer for a few years or maybe a decade, you can buy time. I bought 20 years. So
you live like you don't want to in order to one day live like most can't.
Exactly.
I've heard that a few times. And I think I've heard that the most with many successful people, many wealthy people. I don't like to use the word rich because wealth is different than rich, but I think even Warren Buffett lives that way.
Oh, no question. No, I mean, he still lives in that same house he bought that still has that blinking traffic light. I actually drove by it once because I traveled all the time, and I went out to Nebraska once. And you got to drive by Buffett's house.
Yeah.
It's actually he likes to talk about it being small. He's clearly added on. There's clearly a basement. But yes, he still lives in that same house.
Okay, well, if you liked what you heard from Michael today, you're going to love going to onerentalatatime.com. Check out his book, check out the YouTube page, check out anything you want to leave our audience with today.
Just keep watching channels like this because it is absolutely possible. You have to get educated. Your network. You have to know it's possible. That's hopefully what you take from this is it's absolutely possible. And take a shot. You'll be okay.
I think you've made a lot of people feel a lot more fearless in this process. So
good.
Thank you, Michael. It's your time to go out and conquer real estate investing. We'll talk to you later. Let's take that formula into effect one more time. I just want to kind of recap that for you. The amount of cash flow every month, multiply that by 12. That's how many months are in a year. And then divide that by your initial investment. And that is your ROI for that particular unit, door, property, whatever it is that you're trying to get an ROI on. So Michael has obviously done this a few times. I like that he talks about, not buying the crap and now buying the really good stuff. And that's one way to do it. There's so many different ways to do it. We've seen the burn method. We've seen, add value. We've seen all this different stuff about rental units. And even beyond that, real estate investing from land to flipping to wholesaling. I hope you are really starting to get a grasp on what this business is all about, or if you're in this business, where your niche is going to be. That's exactly what we are trying to help you do here. If you don't feel like it's there yet, make sure you're going to our homepage, fearlessflipping.com. Right there on the homepage, it's your guide to becoming a real estate investor right there. All you got to do is fill out the form real quick. But as for the show notes, Michael Zuber is going to be on this link for our show notes, which is fearlessflipping.com/Zuber, Zuber. That's where you can revisit everything that you've learned, connect with Michael Zuber, and continue to conquer real estate investing. I hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you next time.